Every town, every village, tucked away behind ancient stone walls or nestled beside winding rivers, has one. That place, a warm glow spilling onto the darkened street, marked by a creaking wooden sign that sways gently in the evening breeze. Its scent to that defines it. The deep, comforting aroma of old seasoned wood, the distinct, yeasty temps of stale ale. The rich, savory smell of cured meats hanging from dark beams, and the faint, exciting hint of bad decisions waiting to unfold. This is the medieval tavern, and at its heart stands the keeper, often a woman with eyes sharper than any blacksmith's file, capable of silencing the rowdiest room with a single, unyielding look. Or perhaps a man, broad-shouldered and quiet, whose presence alone demands respect. They've seen everything, heard worse, and cleaned blood from straw before the morning sun. This is where stories are born. Secrets are traded, and the very pulse of the Middle Ages beats loudest. The keeper of such a place is far more than a mere purveyor of ale and a cleaner of spilled drink. They are the true backbone of the community, the silent observer whose memory holds more secrets than any dusty town chronicle could ever hope to contain. Whether it is a woman with calloused hands and a knowing smile, her eyes sharp with years of tireless observation, capable of discerning truth from fabrication in the dim light, or a man with a booming laugh that seems to fill every dark corner of the rafters, resonating deep within the ancient timbers. Their unwavering presence is the invisible glue that binds the tavern's swirling chaos into a delicate, often fragile order. They know which farmer needs a gentle word of encouragement after a poor harvest, having felt the weight of the land themselves. Which weary traveler seeks quiet solitude in a dim, undisturbed corner, nursing a single mug of ale, as if it were the last comfort in the world. And which young apprentice, emboldened by a few too many drinks, is testing the limits of their newfound freedom and, more perilously, their master's patience. They possess an uncanny, almost supernatural ability to recall every debt owed, every small favor granted, every hushed promise whispered in the shadows, and every unspoken truth that passes beneath their watchful, all-seeing gaze. When tempers flare, as they inevitably do, in a place where strong drink, and even stronger, personalities mingle and collide, a single calm word from the keeper delivered with a quiet authority that brooks no argument, or sometimes just a heavy, meaningful stare from across. The smoky, bustling room is often enough to quell the rising storm, before it breaks into a true destructive brawl. They are the unofficial judge, their verdicts respected without formal decree. The silent confessor to countless small sins and great sorrows, offering solace without judgment. And the unyielding guardian of this unique domain, ensuring its continued, albeit raucous, peace. Their wisdom, honed by countless nights of patient observation and quiet listening to the tapestry of human existence, extends far beyond the rhythmic clinking of mugs and the endless murmur of conversation. They understand the deep, unpredictable tides of human nature, the subtle ebb and flow of joy and sorrow, ambition and despair that wash through their establishment each and every night, leaving their indelible marks on the worn wooden tables and the very air itself. They are the true heart and enduring soul of this vital gathering place, a constant presence amidst fleeting moments. And what did these weary souls drink to ease their burdens, fuel their revelry, and find a fleeting comfort in the long medieval nights? Not the fine, clear spirits of later ages, nor the carefully filtered, sparkling brews we know today, but the very essence of the medieval landscape: ale, thick, often cloudy with the sediment of its natural fermentation and rarely filtered. It was the undeniable lifeblood of the common folk. Brewed simply from barley, sometimes oats or wheat, often with wild hops or other local herbs like groot to add bitterness, flavor, and crucial preservation, it was a staple consumed by young and old alike. from the first light of dawn until the last embers of the hearth died out. It was a safer and remarkably often more nutritious alternative to the often questionable water drawn from local wells or stagnant streams, which carried unseen dangers of illness and disease. Imagine a heavy earthenware mug, its rough surface cool against the palm, filled with a brew that might indeed have faint floaties or small bits of unfiltered grain suspended within its depths, a testament to its rustic and natural preparation, a drink of the land itself. Yet it was undeniably warming, it was filling, providing a substantial part of daily calories, and it delivered a gentle, comforting buzz that eased the deep aches of a hard day's labor in the fields or the weary, bone-jarring journey along muddy, perilous roads. The specific recipe for the local brew was a source of fierce, personal pride for each tavern. Its unique flavor profile a signature of the village itself, a taste that defined a home passed down through generations. Beyond the ubiquitous ale, other, more refined or regionally specific libations found their way into the tavern's repertoire, catering to varied tastes, celebrating special occasions, and appealing to deeper pockets. Mead, the ancient golden drink of fermented honey, offered a sweeter, often stronger alternative, its amber hue shimmering invitingly in the torchlight, prized by those with a taste for something more refined, or perhaps a fuller purse that allowed for such luxuries. Its rich floral notes would stand in stark contrast to the darker, earthier ales, a drink whispered about in old sagas and legendary feasts, connecting the present moment to a mythical past. Cider, crafted from the abundant apples of the countryside, provided a crisp, tangy refreshment. Especially popular in regions where sprawling orchards flourished beneath the benevolent sun, their branches heavy with fruit. Its tart sweetness cut through the heavier, richer flavors of traditional tavern food, a light, refreshing counterpoint to the more substantial fare. And for the truly discerning, or the exceptionally wealthy, there might be wine, imported from distant sun-drenched lands across the sea, or carefully cultivated in monastic vineyards by dedicated patient monks. It was a rare luxury, often served with a reverence that spoke of its scarcity, its long journey, and its considerable expense. This was not the light, often watered wine of common feasts, but sometimes a robust, earthy vintage, dark and full-bodied, that carried the very taste of the sun-baked foreign hills it hailed from. A journey in a single, lingering sip, a glimpse into a faraway world. The meticulous, often laborious preparation of these drinks was a daily, tireless ritual, a continuous dance of brewing, tending, and serving. The great wooden vats of fermenting ale in the cool, dark back rooms, the slow, rhythmic, bubbling process that filled the air with a yeasty aroma, the careful monitoring of temperatures and yeast activity with ancient methods, all ensured a steady, vital supply for the thirsty patrons who would soon fill the main hall. Their thirst a constant, demanding presence. The constant, comforting clink of earthenware mugs, the steady, practiced pour from the large wooden barrels, the occasional splash of golden or amber liquid onto the worn floorboards, followed by a quick, efficient mop from a waiting apprentice. These were the comforting, predictable sounds that formed the everyday symphony of medieval nightlife, a background hum of continuous life. Water, if offered at all, was a last resort, presented with a quiet hesitation, a mark of true desperation or a sign of utter sobriety that few sought after dark when the ale flowed freely. Even children drank small beer, a weaker, safer version of ale, with very little alcohol content brewed specifically for this purpose, for the simple, practical, and undeniably crucial fact that it was often far healthier and cleaner than the unreliable and often contaminated water sources available which could carry illness and death. The ale, then, was not merely a drink. It was a sustenance, a form of simple medicine, A vital social lubricant that eased conversation and camaraderie, and a fundamental, undeniable pillar of the medieval diet, as essential and ubiquitous as the bread itself. Its comforting warmth spread through the veins, easing the chill of the evening air. And the deep weariness that settled in the bones after a day of ceaseless labor, gently preparing the body for the long, quiet drift into a well-learned slumber, a peaceful escape from the day's toil. As the evening deepened and the ale began to work its gentle magic, easing the stiffness from tired limbs and loosening tongues with its comforting warmth, the taverns would inevitably turn their attention to another fundamental and most welcomed need: food. Unlike the bustling, diverse menus of our modern eateries, overflowing with choices and exotic ingredients, the medieval tavern offered a more humble yet deeply satisfying fare. There was no printed menu, no extensive list of choices, but rather a simple, hearty selection dictated by the sheer availability of local ingredients and the practicalities of continuous communal cooking over an open flame. The undisputed centerpiece of almost any tavern meal, the very heart of its sustenance, was the pottage, a thick, nourishing stew that simmered continuously, day in and day out, over the open hearth. Sometimes for days, even weeks, in the same colossal iron pot. Imagine a massive soot-stained cauldron, perpetually bubbling and steaming, emitting a rich, complex, savory aroma that mingled inextricably with the smoky air of the common room, carrying the deep, earthy scent of root vegetables, hearty grains like oats or barley, and whatever humble cuts of meat, bone, or even foraged wild greens the diligent cook had managed to acquire throughout the day. This pottage was more than just a meal. It was the very essence of medieval sustenance, a symbol of survival and community. It might contain onions, thick slices of cabbage, tender peas, hearty beans, and whatever seasonal vegetables were available from the nearby gardens or gathered from the fields, all slowly breaking down over hours into a thick, comforting, almost unctuous consistency. Occasionally, a piece of salted pork or bacon, a dried fish caught in the local river, or even a pigeon or a hare, if luck allowed the hunter a good day, would be added to enrich the broth, adding precious protein and flavor. Served in simple utilitarian wooden bowls, often with a large thick slice of coarse stale bread, used not just for eating, but as a practical trencher to soak up every last drop of the rich, savory juices. It was a meal designed for functionality, immediate warmth, and maximum calories, not culinary finesse or delicate presentation. Each serving, ladled out with a generous hand, was a little different from the last, reflecting the layers of ingredients added over days, a taste of history, a true culinary palimpsest in every single spoonful. Imagine the feeling of that warm, coarse bread in your hand, absorbing the rich, hearty liquid, providing immediate comfort and a surge of welcome. Energy after a long, arduous day spent tilling fields, traveling roads, or hammering at a forge. The shared act of eating, even this humble, unchanging meal, forged quiet, unspoken bonds among strangers who sat elbow to elbow and reinforced the simple, profound pleasure of warmth, satiety, and safety in a harsh, unpredictable world. Beyond the ever-present pottage, other simple provisions might be available, offering variety to those with a bit more coin or a desire for something different. Hard cheeses often made from sheep or goat milk, robust and flavorful cured meats like heavily salted beef or richly smoked ham hanging from hooks in the cool pantry, and dense dark loaves of rye or barley. Bread often baked fresh in the village oven would be offered. These were foods built for endurance, for long journeys, and for even longer shelf life, perfect for a transient clientele of travelers and traders. Sometimes, if the hunter had been exceptionally lucky in the nearby woods, or the local market had seen a rare surge in prosperity, there might be a freshly roasted fowl, its skin crackling and fragrant with herbs, or a succulent piece of venison, a rare and highly prized luxury that would draw murmurs of appreciation and envious glances from across the room. These moments, when fresh, rich, protein-filled food was available, were celebrated with gusto, devoured quickly, almost ritually, before the fleeting opportunity vanished and scarcity returned. The simple, undeniable truth was that every meal was a victory against the odds. Every satisfied stomach a small, personal triumph against the ever-present threat of scarcity and famine that loomed outside the tavern's welcoming walls. As the food was served and consumed, slowly or with hungry haste, the tavern truly came alive with its most vital and captivating element, the people. This was the original social media, a living, breathing, bustling network where news, rumors, and gossip spread faster than any royal rider, and conversation, rumor, and scandal were the true circulating currency. Farmers, their hands still rough and calloused from the soil, their faces tanned by the sun and wind, would rub shoulders with weathered soldiers. Their faces etched with the unspoken tales of distant battles and harrowing journeys. Traveling merchants, their pouches jingling with coin from distant exotic lands, would sit alongside quiet. Contemplative monks seeking temporary respite from their vows, or perhaps a fleeting human connection outside their cloistered, disciplined lives. Here social distinctions, while never entirely forgotten, often blurred in the communal warmth and the shared haze of ale, creating a rare space where a different strata of society could briefly mingle. Everyone was a potential source of information, a new face with a new story, a fleeting connection in a vast, uncertain, and often lonely world. You would see groups huddled intimately around a rough-hewn wooden table, their heads bent close in intense, hushed conversation, perhaps discussing the unpredictable crop prices for the coming season, the latest and often contradictory royal decree from the distant castle, or the suspicious movements of a local lord's retinue. Over in another corner, a boisterous red-faced group might be engaged in a loud, passionate game of dice, their shouts of triumph or groans of despair echoing boisterously through the room, punctuated by the sharp clatter of bone or wood on the table. A lone minstrel, perhaps, with nimble fingers, would tune his lute by the crackling fire, preparing to offer tales of chivalry, lost love, heroic battles, or simply bawdy songs that brought a blush to the cheeks, his melodies weaving through the ambient noise, sometimes captivating the entire room in a shared silence of appreciation, sometimes serving as mere pleasant background to the ongoing din. Young lovers, perhaps, would steal furtive glances across the crowded room, their unspoken desires as palpable as the smoke rising from the hearth, their hands brushing accidentally under the table. Children, too, were often present, playing quietly, almost invisibly underfoot, learning the complex rhythms of adult life, perhaps snatching a dropped crumb or two from the floor, or listening wide-eyed to the snippets of adult conversation. The sheer variety and constant flow of human interaction was mesmerizing, a grand tapestry of life unfolding with every passing moment. This was a place of vital trade, where crucial deals were struck and fragile alliances formed, often sealed not with parchment and wax, but with a firm handshake and a shared mug of ale. It was a place of rampant gossip, where reputations could be made or utterly ruined by a few carelessly whispered words that traveled faster than any bird. It was a place of profound connection, where lonely souls found fleeting companionship and understanding, and where weary travelers, far from their homes, found a temporary sense of belonging, a welcoming hearth, a safe haven. The very air itself thrummed with the vibrant energy of countless individual lives, each one contributing their unique thread to the vibrant, chaotic, yet strangely harmonious symphony of the medieval night. The indelible smell of humanity, a rich mixture of honest sweat, coarse wool, fragrant wood smoke, and the ever-present aroma of ale, filled the air, a pungent but strangely comforting aroma that spoke of shared existence, shared struggles, and shared moments of joy. Each person a living, breathing chapter in a larger, unfolding story, living out their small, personal dramas under the watchful eye of the tavern keeper and the warm, embracing glow of the dancing firelight. The sounds of the tavern, too, were a living entity, a constant, comforting presence that invited you to settle deeper into your chair and allow the worries of the day to slowly, gradually drift away with the smoke towards the ancient rafters above. As the hours drifted on, slowly, almost imperceptibly, and the flickering torchlight softened the rough edges of the tavern, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to tell their own silent stories, the entire space truly began to resonate with its own unique, living melody, a veritable symphony of chaos. Yet this was not a jarring, unpleasant cacophony, but rather a rich, intricately layered tapestry of sounds, each individual thread contributing harmoniously to the comforting, steady hum of communal life, a constant reminder of shared existence. There was, first and foremost, the constant, rhythmic clink of earthenware mugs being raised in toasts, lowered with a satisfying thud, and refilled from wooden barrels, a soft, earthy percussion against the deeper, more profound thrum of human conversation. Laughter in all its myriad forms punctuated the air with spontaneous bursts, deep, booming, hearty guffaws from a group of successful merchants, celebrating a profitable deal, nervous, almost shy giggles from young lovers, stealing furtive glances, and the occasional slightly hysterical cackle from someone who had simply had a few too many drinks, their inhibitions long forgotten. The omnipresent murmur of countless conversations, a low, steady drone like thousands of bees in a summer hive, was always present, rising and falling in gentle, undulating waves, creating a soothing background wash of human connection. Fragments of discussion would drift tantalizingly across the crowded room, snippets of urgent news about the unpredictable harvest, weary complaints about the Lord's ever-increasing taxes, or hushed fearful whispers about a recent bandit attack on the treacherous road, stories shaping the collective consciousness. Beneath this captivating human chorus, a deeper, more fundamental layer of ambient sounds formed the tavern's true pulsating heartbeat, its very foundation. The soft, rhythmic creak of the wooden benches as patrons shifted their weight, seeking a more comfortable position, or leaning closer to hear a whispered secret. The gentle scrape of stools being pulled across the packed earth floor, drawing them nearer to the warmth of the roaring fire, or a newly joined companion, and the muffled, heavy thump of heavily booted feet on the worn, uneven floorboards, signaling an arrival, a departure, or simply a restless movement. From the corners of the room, often shrouded in deeper shadow, you might catch the distinct, sharp rattle of dice on a scarred wooden table, followed almost immediately by a sharp cheer of triumph or a frustrated groan of despair. If a traveling minstrel or a local bard was present, their lute or pipes would add a delicate, sometimes haunting, sometimes joyful melody, its notes weaving gracefully through the louder sounds, sometimes captivating the entire room into a momentary, reverent silence of appreciation, at other times simply blending into the background as an unnoticed, yet pleasant accompaniment to the unfolding evening's events. Beyond the sturdy tavern walls, the faint, comforting bark of a distant dog in the village, the sleepy bleating of a tethered goat in a nearby pen, or the gentle, mournful whistle of the wind through a crack in the shutters, might offer a subtle yet reassuring connection to the quiet, slumbering world outside. This indeed was the authentic music of the medieval night, a living, breathing soundscape that invited one to settle deeper into the enveloping warmth, to let the worries and stresses of the world slowly, gradually dissolve into the comforting hum, a lullaby of timeless human activity. Amidst this bustling, vibrant symphony, one of the most popular and often tumultuous pastimes was Without doubt, gambling. The tavern served as an unofficial yet bustling and endlessly active casino, a place where fortunes, however small or grand, could be won or lost on the swift turn of a painted card or the unpredictable roll of a polished bone dice. Every table, it seemed, had its own game running, its own group of eager, hopeful players. Most common, simple, and accessible was the game of dice, tossed with practiced hands from a worn leather cup onto the rough wooden surface. The sharp clatter echoing momentarily before the boisterous shouts of the players erupted, reflecting their immediate fate. Imagine the intense, almost feverish concentration in their eyes, the quick, furtive glances exchanged between rivals, the nervous energy that crackled palpably around the gambling tables, drawing in onlookers. Bets varied wildly from a few shining copper coins that represented a day's meager wages to precious personal belongings. A gleaming silver buckle, a worn but prized dagger, or even the boots from one's very feet, leaving a loser to limp home barefoot. The stakes could escalate with alarming speed, fueled by copious amounts of drink and the intoxicating rush of possibility of a sudden, life-changing windfall. Card games, though perhaps less common and often requiring more skill or understanding than a simple throw of dice, also held sway, with simple hand-painted decks of cards laying out unpredictable fates on the table. There were almost always hushed whispers and knowing glances about cheating, for in such an environment, where fortunes hung in the balance, the temptation to stack the odds in one's favor was ever present. A quick, practiced hand, a palmed die, a subtle misdirection of the eye, a pre-marked card. These clever, often subtle deceptions were an unwritten, yet acknowledged, part of the game's brutal rules. Detected only by the most vigilant or experienced players, those with an eye for human folly. Brawls over accusations of cheating were frequent, if usually short-lived occurrence, quickly fizzling out or being diffused by the ever-present watchful tavern keeper's intervention. The sheer thrill of the gamble, the sudden rush of winning that felt like a burst of sunlight, or the crushing, immediate blow of losing that felt like a physical weight was a powerful, irresistible draw, a momentary, thrilling escape from the predictable drudgery of daily life. For some, it was a desperate attempt to change their fortunes to escape the bonds of poverty. For others, simply a harmless, if expensive, way to pass the long, dark hours of the night. As the games of chance unfolded, another, more ancient and deeply ingrained form of entertainment thrived, capturing imaginations: storytelling. The medieval tavern was the ultimate oral tradition hub, a pulsating center where news was not read from scrolls, but passionately spoken and dramatically recounted, and where history was not written in dusty tomes, but vibrantly retold and relived through the power of the human voice. Often, a traveling minstrel or bard would take center stage, perhaps on a small, elevated platform, plucking at a lute or a small harp, their melodic voice weaving intricate tales of valiant knights and fair maidens, of mythical beasts lurking in forgotten forests and legendary battles that echoed through time. These weren't always strictly factual accounts. Truth, in the tavern, was often a flexible, malleable concept, bending easily to the demands of a compelling narrative and the desire to entertain. Imagine the hushed reverence that would sweep over the room as the audience for a fleeting moment fell silent, utterly captivated by the raw power of the spoken word, carried away to distant lands of daring adventure and timeless romance, their own lives momentarily forgotten. But storytelling wasn't limited to the seasoned professionals. Every patron, it seemed, had a tale to tell, a fragment of their life or local lore to share. A merchant might recount a perilous journey through bandit-infested forests, exaggerating the dangers and his own heroism for dramatic effect, drawing gasps from the listeners. A grizzled soldier might share exaggerated exploits from a forgotten skirmish, his bravery growing exponentially with each sip of ale. Old men would drone on about the good old days, their memories blurring with time and embellishment, but always with a comforting nostalgia. These personal narratives, often spiced with earthy humor, poignant tragedy, or juicy local gossip, were the true vibrant fabric of tavern life, knitting together countless individual experiences into a collective, shared understanding of a world-building community, one story at a time. And often intertwined with these narratives, sometimes playful, sometimes outright clumsy, was the delicate, ancient art of flirting. Young men and women, freed from the strictures of family and the harsh scrutiny of daylight, would exchange furtive glances across crowded tables, shy smiles that spoke volumes, and whispered jokes that only they could share. Bold advances, often met with blushing rebuffs or playful encouragement, added a vibrant, exciting undercurrent to the evening's energy. Jealous quarrels might erupt over a misinterpreted look or a stolen dance, quickly fizzling out or escalating into a brief, comical scuffle, testament to the raw emotions at play. Yet amidst the noise and the chaos, genuine connections could also be forged hushed conversations leading to shared dreams and tentative promises. A quiet understanding passing between two souls, finding solace and perhaps true affection in the warm, inviting, and surprisingly intimate glow of the medieval tavern. The scent of pine and hearth smoke, mixed with the faint sweetness of unwashed bodies and the yeasty tang of ale, filled the air, an intoxicating blend that encouraged lingering and connection. Amidst the swirling currents of animated conversation, the rhythmic clinking of mugs, and the captivating tales spun by seasoned minstrels, there inevitably arrived a moment that was, to a seasoned tavern regular, as predictable and certain as the very rising of the morning sun. The brawl. These tumultuous events were surprisingly rarely grim or life-threatening affairs in the typical medieval tavern, but rather boisterous, often comical explosions of pent-up energy and simmering frustrations, fueled by the generous flow of ale and the occasional lingering grievance that had festered throughout the day. Imagine the sudden, almost dramatic hush that would momentarily fall over a specific section of the room. A collective holding of breath swiftly followed by the jarring sound of a wooden chair scraping loudly across the packed earth floor, a raw shouted insult hurled across a table, and then almost instantly a flurry of flailing arms, stumbling bodies, and startled cries. It might ignite from a heated dispute over a simple card game, a perceived slight to one's honor, a misplaced word in a crowded corner, or simply too much strong drink, loosening a tongue that should have remained respectfully still. The very air itself would thicken with a sudden, palpable tension, then erupt with a cacophony of shouts, grunts, and the dull, heavy thud of bodies clumsily colliding, yet rarely, surprisingly, with true malice or deadly intent. The typical tavern brawl was a strange, chaotic ballet of clumsy, wide-swinging punches, often comically missed swings that connected only with the empty air, and the indignant cries of surprised bystanders inadvertently caught in the expanding fray. Men, often more drunk than genuinely angry, would stumble and sway, often hitting the wooden support beams or a bewildered fellow patron instead of their intended target. There would be the inevitable disheartening sound of earthenware mugs shattering loudly on the floor, the sticky splash of ale, creating slippery hazards beneath unsteady feet, and the sharp, indignant cries of those whose drinks or dignity had been inadvertently ruined. Chairs might overturn with a crash, scattering their occupants across the floor, and sturdy tables could be violently jostled, sending cards, dice, and half-eaten meals flying in all directions. Yet, throughout this commotion, there was an unspoken, almost ritualistic understanding. This was a temporary, almost cathartic release of tension, a storm that would quickly pass. The common folk, accustomed to such spectacles, knew how these played out. The onlookers, initially startled, would quickly form a loose, expectant circle, half watching with morbid fascination and amusement, half ready to jump out of the way should the chaos threaten to spread too far beyond its immediate confines. Some might even offer shouted advice or boisterous encouragement to their chosen combatant, adding their voices to the general, escalating din. It was almost always the tavern keeper, with an air of practiced authority, who brought the chaos to an abrupt, decisive, and often comical end. With a surprising speed and agility that belied their often stolid appearance, they would move purposefully through the tangled limbs and shouted. Accusations, a heavy club, a substantial tankard, or sometimes just their sheer imposing presence cutting through the fray like a ship through troubled waters. A single, powerful blow delivered to the floor near the combatant's feet, or a stern, unyielding command, delivered with a voice that brooked no argument, would usually be enough to freeze the action. The combatants, suddenly sobered by the cold, unyielding reality of the keeper's formidable wrath, would quickly disentangle themselves from their entanglement, grumbling and nursing bruised knuckles, but ultimately compliant. There was no argument with the keeper. Their word was the unquestioned law in this domain, and their peace was absolute. Imagine the sudden, almost comical silence that would descend once the fight was quelled, broken only by the heavy, ragged breathing of the former combatants and the quiet, rhythmic clinking of coins as patrons settled their quick bets on who would land the first punch or who would fall first. The scattered chairs would be quickly righted, the broken pottery and spilled ale swept aside with practiced efficiency, and within moments the general hum of conversation would resume as if the brawl had been a mere momentary intermission in the night's unfolding drama, a brief, forgotten ripple in the comforting warmth and continuous flow of the tavern's life. As the deep night wore on, slowly, past the peak of the boisterous feasting, and the occasional energetic brawling, a palpable, almost tangible shift in the tavern's atmosphere began to occur. The initial, overflowing, boisterous energy slowly began to wane, replaced by a softer, more subdued contentment. A gentle descent into the quietude of late hours. The laughter became less frequent and more muted. The animated conversations dropped to a lower, gentler murmur, and the clinking of mugs softened to an occasional, deliberate, gentle chime. This was the gradual descent into the quieter hours, the slow winding down of the medieval nightlife as the outside world settled deeper and deeper into its own profound slumber. Patrons, their eyes heavy with the effects of ale and the deep exhaustion of a long day, would begin to bid their quiet farewells, their voices hushed, stepping out into the crisp, cool night air, their footsteps echoing faintly on the cobblestones as they made their solitary way home through the silent streets. The heavy wooden doors would creak open and close with a sigh, admitting gentle draughts of the cooler night air, carrying the faint scent of dew and distant wood smoke into the lingering warmth of the hall. For those whose homes were too far for a safe, late-night journey, or who simply sought refuge from the biting cold and the dark, perilous roads, the tavern offered a crude yet undeniably welcome form of lodging. This was time to sleep, a chance to finally rest weary bones and aching muscles before the inexorable demands of a new day. There were no private rooms, no soft, luxurious feather beds reserved for individual comfort and privacy, at least not for the common traveler or the working man. Instead, patrons would find what space they could, often sleeping communally in the main hall itself, their bodies a tangle of limbs and coarse cloth, or perhaps in a small, cramped loft above the common room accessible by a creaky wooden ladder. Imagine a quiet corner where benches were pushed together to form a rough sleeping platform, or a coveted space near the dying embers of the hearth, radiating a last, comforting, lingering warmth. Simple straw mattresses, often thin and smelling faintly of their last occupant, or perhaps A faint earthy scent of the straw itself would be laid out directly on the floor covered by coarse woolen blankets that offered little in the way of softness, but essential warmth against the creeping chill of the night air. The sounds of the sleeping tavern were entirely different from the vibrant symphony of chaos that preceded them. The vibrant clamor of the evening was replaced by a soft, rhythmic chorus of contented sighs, gentle snores that rose and fell like waves, and the occasional restless rustle of straw as a sleeper shifted. The roaring fire, once a vibrant heart, would have dwindled to a collection of glowing, pulsing embers, casting a lazy orange light that danced slowly across the sleeping faces of the figures stretched out across the floor. The rich scent of wood smoke would be stronger now, more concentrated, mingled with the faint, warm smell of sleeping bodies and the lingering aroma of stale ale, creating a comforting, heavy perfume that filled the quiet air. You might hear the distant, almost imperceptible scurry of a mouse in the ancient rafters, or the soft, rhythmic patter of rain against the wooden roof, each tiny sound amplified in the deep quiet, yet quickly absorbed back into the profound, enveloping silence. Sleep in the medieval tavern was not a luxurious escape, not a pampered indulgence, but a deep, heavy surrender to utter exhaustion, a necessary, vital respite before the world outside demanded awakening with the first light. Each slow, even breath, each gentle snore, became part of the tavern's own unique lullaby, a testament to the simple, profound, and universal human need for rest in a world that never truly slept, a cycle of ceaseless labor and brief, hard-won repose. Once filled with lively conversation and loud laughter, the air was now filled with deep silence and peaceful tranquility. This silence was broken only by the soft, rhythmic sounds of weary bodies drifting off to sleep. The tavern keeper, after a long day, would finally retire to rest, perhaps after checking on his sleeping customers one last time. He moved across the worn floorboards with light, familiar steps, like a shadow in the depths of the night. The last flickering candle cast long, dancing shadows, and as the light gave way to the deeper, denser darkness of a true medieval night, the shadows stretched out and slowly faded away. For a brief moment, the bustling heart of the community found the quiet and peaceful rest it deserved as the spirits of the day drifted into dreams of fields, to be plowed journeys to be made, or simply the next satisfying meal awaiting them. Now asleep, the old tavern holds within its walls the countless echoes of thousands of untold and retold stories, preparing to awaken at dawn, ready to welcome a new day and new characters to its timeless, enduring stage. As the final lingering echoes of the night's revelry slowly faded, swallowed by the deep, profound silence of the hour, a subtle transformation began to steal across the medieval world. The air grew colder, holding the crisp promise of a new day, and the very first, almost imperceptible hints of pale gray light began to filter through the cracks in the wooden shutters, painting thin, shifting streaks across the packed earth floor. This was the quiet, gentle arrival of dawn creeping in, a time when the world outside the tavern's thick walls was still steeped in slumber, yet slowly stirring. The sounds that now filled the tavern were entirely different from the vibrant cacophony of the previous hours. They were the hushed, intimate sounds of a place slowly, cautiously, awakening from its brief, well-earned slumber. The soft, rhythmic snoring of the few remaining patrons who had found solace. And warmth in the common room would continue for a time, a comforting, almost primal chorus that spoke of deep, unworried sleep. The tavern keeper, a figure of enduring resilience and quiet strength, would often be the very first to stir, long before the sun had fully cleared the eastern horizon, their internal clock perfectly attuned to the rhythms of the house. Their movements would be quiet, practiced, and remarkably efficient, honed by countless mornings of diligent routine. You might hear the gentle rustle of their rough tunic, the soft creak of their worn boots on the ancient floorboards, as they began their solitary, almost meditative tasks. Perhaps they would approach the vast, soot-stained iron cauldron, stirring the remaining pottage, preparing it for the few early risers, or for the demands of the coming midday meal. A fresh log might be quietly placed upon the dying, glowing embers of the hearth, coaxing the flames back to vibrant life with a gentle puff of bellows, sending new, fragrant tendrils of smoke curling towards the high, shadowy rafters. The distinct smell of fresh wood smoke would soon mingle with the lingering scent of stale ale and sleeping bodies, a unique, almost nostalgic perfume of the dawn in a medieval tavern. They might then begin to wipe down the rough-hewn wooden tables or sweep away the scattered straw and dropped crumbs from the previous night's festivities. A quiet ritual of cleansing and renewal, patiently preparing the space for a new cycle. One by one, the few remaining sleepers would begin to stir aroused, not by the harsh clamor of an alarm, but by the subtle shift in the light, the faint sounds of the awakening tavern, or the persistent ache in their own weary bones. A deep grunt, a slow, stretching yawn, the deliberate rubbing of sleep from their eyes. They would gather their meager belongings, perhaps adjusting a worn cloak, and then, with a quiet nod of thanks or a brief, mumbled farewell, step out into the crisp, cool morning air. Their footsteps, once again, would echo faintly on the cobblestones of the waking street, carrying them back to their fields, their distant homes, or the start of a new, arduous journey. The heavy wooden door would creak open and close with a final sigh, sealing the tavern's temporary quietude, preserving its brief, precious moment of peace. This was the gradual exodus, the gentle dispersing of the night's diverse community, as each individual returned to their own solitary duties under the pale, growing light of the new day. And so, the tavern, having served as a vibrant, living stage for the night's myriad dramas, would find its own brief, vital repose before the relentless cycle of life began anew. The lingering warmth of the hearth, even in its dying, fading embers, provided a final, tender, embracing comfort to those still within its walls, guiding the mind deeper into the peaceful realm of dreams, a perfect, gentle end to the long, laborious medieval day. It was this rhythmic, timeless cycle, this constant, predictable transition from bustling, lively night to quiet, contemplative dawn that defined the very essence of the medieval tavern, making it far more than just a structure of wood and stone. It was a living entity, breathing with a pulse of humanity. Ultimately, the medieval tavern was far more than just a simple place to drink, find meager shelter, or pass a few idle hours of leisure. It was the indisputable, pulsating, beating heart of the community, the very soul of an age-long past, a vital, irreplaceable organ without which medieval society could scarcely function. It was the primary hub where news and gossip spread faster and more reliably than any official decree, or meticulously written missive carried by royal messengers. A whispered rumor over a mug of ale could traverse an entire village faster than any mounted rider, shaping public opinions and influencing crucial decisions. It was a rare, truly public space where rigid social classes often blurred, however momentarily. In the shared warmth of the hearth and the communal, intoxicating spirit of drink, a grizzled peasant might sit elbow to elbow with a traveling noble. A cunning merchant might share a rough wooden bench with a weary soldier. A quiet scholar might even find himself sharing a moment of silent understanding with a boisterous commoner, each finding a fleeting common ground that transcended their usual, rigid, societal divides. Agreements both large and small, vital and mundane, were often struck and sealed within its smoky, intimate confines, from a simple trade of grain for tools to more complex arrangements of land, livestock, or labor, often binding people together in mutual dependency. It was a place where work could be found, a traveling craftsman seeking an apprentice, a farmer needing extra hands for the urgent harvest, or a lord steward looking to hire temporary guards. The tavern served as an informal organic employment exchange, efficiently connecting supply with demand. It was a stage where quarrels often began, sometimes escalating into the minor, almost theatrical brawls we have described yet just as often. They were diffused and resolved peacefully by the calm wisdom of the keeper, or the calming, unifying influence of shared drink and common sense. But perhaps most profoundly and importantly, the medieval tavern was an indispensable refuge from the harsh, unforgiving realities of the outside world. Beyond its sturdy wooden doors lay a landscape fraught with unpredictable dangers. Capricious weather patterns, rough and perilous roads infested with brigands, the constant, demanding presence of feudal lords, and the ever-present specter of illness, famine, and death. Inside, however, there was dependable warmth, welcoming light, reassuring companionship, and the comforting, if temporary, illusion of safety and abundance. It was a place where worries could be momentarily forgotten, where the weary could truly rest their bones, and where the lonely could find fleeting human connection. It was a sanctuary, a true haven of simple pleasures and shared humanity, a microcosm of the ideal human community, a bubble of peace in a turbulent age. The roaring, crackling fire, the constant comforting clatter of mugs, the low, steady murmur of voices, all conspired to create an enveloping cocoon of warmth and comfort. A temporary shield against the relentless anxieties and uncertainties of a challenging age. This was a place where laughter echoed freely, where stories of both triumph and despair found eager ears and where, for a few precious hours, life felt less burdensome, more communal, and undeniably vibrant a place where the human spirit could truly breathe and find solace. It was a timeless institution, reflecting the very heart of human resilience and the universal need for connection. This loud, dirty, honest, and utterly unforgettable microcosm of medieval life was more than a mere building. It was an essential living part of the rich tapestry of existence, intricately woven into the very fabric of daily life, shaping its very rhythm. It was a powerful symbol of resilience, unbreakable community, and the enduring human spirit's timeless need for connection, solace, and respite from the world's harsh realities. It stood as a silent yet powerful testament to the simple joys that could be found even in the most challenging and unforgiving of times. A sacred place where the echoes of history continued to whisper long after the last patron had departed, and the last embers had finally died, ready to ignite again with the new dawn. Beyond the singular, often imagined image of a bustling common room filled with laughter and song, the medieval tavern was in fact rich tapestry woven from many different threads, presenting itself in a myriad of forms each, adapted meticulously to its specific location and the diverse needs of its unique clientele. There was no single blueprint, no universal design for these vital establishments, but rather a broad spectrum of structures, each with its own distinctive character and charm, or indeed its noticeable lack thereof. Imagine, if you will, the humble alehouse, often nothing more than a simple, unassuming cottage, nestled in a small, sleepy village, or occupying a quiet, unassuming corner of a bustling town distinguishable, perhaps, only by a rough, unpainted wooden sign depicting a simple bush, a single barrel, or a crudely drawn animal signifying its purpose to the illiterate majority. These were the most common and ubiquitous, found at almost every crossroads and within every collection of dwellings, however sparse. They were run, more often than not, by a local woman, a brewster, who sold the ale she brewed herself in her own humble home, a crucial endeavor supplementing her family's often meager income. These small alehouses were intimate, often cramped spaces, perhaps just one or two small rooms, with low, heavy ceilings and an ever-present taste, warm scent of yeast, fermenting grain, and comforting wood smoke. The furniture would be rudimentary and robust. A few rough-hewn tables, uneven benches worn smooth by generations of use, and a single crackling hearth providing essential warmth and the means for simple cooking. There would be little in the way of adornment, save for perhaps a few hanging dried herbs from the ceiling rafters, or a well-used blackened cooking pot eternally simmering over the embers. Here, the conversations were quieter, more familiar, weaving intimately through the small, tight-knit group of locals who frequented the establishment, sharing their daily woes and humble triumphs in hushed tones. The thick, often uneven walls, made of wattle and daub, might absorb the sounds rather than amplify them, lending a unique sense of hushed intimacy to the exchanges, making every shared word feel significant. The light would be softer, filtering through small and glazed windows that offered glimpses of the outside world, or provided by a single, sputtering candle that cast dancing, ephemeral shadows on the uneven, whitewashed walls. These were places of pure, unadorned community, where the quiet rhythm of rural life unfolded in its most direct, unvarnished form, a true extension of the private home, a collective living room. Then, moving up the scale of grandeur and purpose, there were the larger, more substantial taverns proper, frequently found in bustling market towns or strategically positioned along the well-trafficked, winding trade routes that connected distant settlements. These establishments were often purpose-built, grander affairs designed specifically to accommodate a more diverse and transient clientele. Their architecture would often be more elaborate, perhaps featuring multiple stories, stout timber frames that formed a sturdy skeleton, and robust stone foundations that spoke of permanence and longevity. These might feature not just a large communal common room, but also a dedicated bustling kitchen, cool subterranean storage, cellars for barrels of precious ale and imported wine, and even rudimentary stables for travelers' weary horses, often with a stable boy in attendance. Imagine a more imposing facade perhaps, with a more intricately carved and painted sign depicting a coat of arms, a specific animal symbolizing strength or hospitality, or a symbolic object like a foaming tankard or a bountiful bunch of grapes hinting at the quality and variety of fare within. The common room would be significantly larger, capable of holding dozens of patrons, with higher ceilings that allowed the smoke and human breath to dissipate somewhat more freely. The tables would be more numerous, arranged for larger groups and more dynamic interactions, and perhaps even featuring small, semi-private nooks or enclosed booths for those seeking a modicum of privacy amidst the communal bustle. In these larger taverns, the sounds were grander, the symphony of chaos more pronounced and complex. The echoing clatter of many mugs, the louder roars of laughter, the more numerous and fervent games of dice, and the constant, vibrant murmur of 100 conversations, each vying for fleeting attention, all merged into a powerful, enveloping hum. The fireplaces would be grander, roaring with unbridled enthusiasm, casting a brighter, more expansive glow that reached into every corner of the vast space. Often, these establishments would offer more than just basic pottage. Perhaps freshly roasted meats, savory baked pies, or even fresh fish caught from local rivers, depending on the tavern's precise location and the wealth of its owner. The staff would be larger too, a veritable hive of activity with multiple serving wenches, industrious scullery boys, and diligent stable hands, each contributing their part to the efficient, if still rustic, operation. These were the bustling hubs of commerce and social interaction, where crucial news from distant lands mingled seamlessly with juicy local gossip, and important deals were struck, often sealed with a handshake and a shared mug under the watchful, discerning eye of the establishment's formidable keeper. And finally, at the very top of the medieval hospitality hierarchy, were the grand inns, particularly those found in major, thriving cities or strategically placed along major pilgrimage routes that crisscross the continent. These were sophisticated enterprises, often resembling small, self-contained fortresses with their enclosed courtyards, multiple distinct buildings, and a comprehensive array of dedicated services beyond mere food and drink. They didn't just offer sustenance, but also genuine, albeit still basic by modern standards, lodging. Guests might find not just a shared sleeping hall filled with many, but perhaps even small, private chambers, sometimes furnished with rudimentary beds, coarse linens, and perhaps even a basin for washing, a true luxury. The vast courtyards would be bustling with constant activity from dawn till dusk. Farriers shoeing horses with rhythmic clangs, merchants unloading valuable goods from creaking wagons, and weary pilgrims preparing for the next arduous leg of their spiritual journey, their faces etched with devotion. Imagine the rich medley of sounds, the rhythmic thud of hooves on cobblestones, the high-pitched creak of wagon wheels, the chatter of many languages, and the distant metallic ringing of a blacksmith's hammer from a nearby forge. Within these inns, the common room would still be a central, lively feature. But there might also be more refined dining areas or smaller, quieter parlors for more distinguished and discerning guests seeking solitude or private conversation. The food and drink would be of higher quality, possibly offering exquisite wines imported from sun-drenched vineyards in France or Italy, and a wider, more luxurious variety of roasted meats, fresh game, and finely baked breads. These were places of significant importance, serving as essential way stations for nobility, high-ranking clergy, and wealthy merchants, acting as nerve centers for long-distance travel, commerce, and communication across the medieval world. The innkeeper in such a place would be a figure of considerable local influence, often a wealthy and respected member of the community, well connected to various networks and possessing a shrewd understanding of the broader political and economic currents of the world. These grander establishments, though still bearing the earthy, honest scent of wood smoke and the comforting tang of ale, would also carry a faint, discernible whiff of ambition, of power, and of the broader, larger currents of the medieval world that flowed ceaselessly through their ancient gates. Each type of tavern, from the humble alehouse to the grand, imposing inn, played its own distinct and crucial role in the intricate social and economic fabric of medieval life. They were more than mere buildings, more than just structures of wood and stone. They were living entities breathing and adapting to the evolving needs of their diverse patrons, providing solace, vital sustenance, and a crucial connection to the wider, often dangerous world. The experience of stepping into each was unique and varied, yet all shared that fundamental, comforting promise of warmth, light, and a temporary, much-needed escape from the harshness of the outside. The sounds, the smells, the conversations all varied, creating a rich and diverse tapestry of human experiences across the sprawling medieval landscape, inviting traveler and local alike to find their own particular corner of comfort and connection before the inevitable call of the long winding road or the quiet demanding duties of home. They stood as enduring symbols of human ingenuity and resilience, adapting to survive and thrive in a world constantly in flux. As the final ethereal tendrils of dawn stretched across the waking land, touching the ancient stones and rough timber of the tavern, a profound quietude settled, a stark contrast to the lively symphony that had echoed within its walls just hours before. The last embers of the grand hearth glowed with a soft, warm pulse, their faint light dancing across the now empty benches, illuminating dust motes suspended in the cool morning air. The lingering scent of stale ale, wood smoke, and a hint of roasted meat still clung to the fabric of the room. A ghostly reminder of the night's communion, but it was mellowed now, softened by the crispness of the new day. This was the moment of quiet reflection. the interlude between one cycle of human activity and the next. A profound stillness that invited the mind to wander, to ponder the deeper meaning of this timeless place. We have journeyed through a single night in a medieval tavern, witnessed its vibrant life, felt the warmth of its hearth, heard the clamor of its patrons, and understood its undeniable importance to a world so different from our own. But as the sun begins its slow ascent, painting the sky with hues of rose and gold, we are invited to consider something deeper, the enduring spirit of the tavern, a spirit that transcends centuries, a subtle thread connecting that distant past to our very present. What was it about these ancient gathering places that allowed them to persist, to evolve, and to remain an integral part of the human experience through countless generations? Perhaps it was the fundamental human need for connection. In a world often harsh and unforgiving, where life was lived in isolated villages and dangerous journeys separated communities, the tavern offered a crucial nexus. It was a place where strangers could briefly become companions, where news could be exchanged, and where the weight of daily burdens could be shared, if only for a few fleeting hours. Imagine the quiet yearning for company after a long day of solitary labor in the fields, or the deep relief of finding a welcoming light after a perilous journey through a dark, bandit-ridden forest. This longing for a shared space, for collective humanity, is not unique to the Middle Ages. It resonates deeply within us, even today, in our pubs, our coffee houses, our restaurants, and our community centers. The form may change, the technology may advance, but the underlying desire to gather, to converse, to simply be with others remains a constant, a fundamental aspect of the human condition. Consider, too, the role of the tavern as a refuge and a sanctuary. In an era devoid of central heating, electric light, and immediate communication, the tavern was a beacon of warmth and safety. It was a place where the traveler could escape the biting cold, the pouring rain, or the oppressive darkness. It offered not just physical warmth from the roaring fire, but also psychological warmth from the presence of other souls. It was a temporary haven from the relentless demands of feudal lords, the constant threat of disease, and the general precariousness of life. This need for a safe harbor, a place to temporarily shed the anxieties of the outside world, is equally timeless. We still seek out spaces where we feel secure, where we can relax our guard, and where the world's complexities can, for a brief while, recede into the background. The tavern, in its ancient simplicity, perfected this role. Then there is the alchemy of simple pleasures. The medieval tavern offered sustenance that was more than mere calories. It was comfort. The warm ale, brewed with care, the hearty pottage simmering patiently over the fire, the fresh baked bread. These were not just provisions, but small yet profound luxuries in a world often defined by scarcity. The shared meal, the communal drink, these acts fostered a sense of belonging and satisfaction that transcended the simple act of eating or drinking. It was the feeling of a full belly, a warm glow from within, and the shared camaraderie that truly nourished the soul. In our modern age of abundance, we might overlook the profound significance of these basic comforts, but the tavern reminds us of their timeless power to bring contentment and ease. The echoes of the medieval tavern whisper through our modern world, if we choose to listen. The pub at the corner, with its familiar faces and comforting routines, carries the spirit of the old alehouse. The bustling cafe, where ideas are debated and connections are forged over warm drinks, mirrors the intellectual and social hub of the grander taverns. The humble roadside diner, offering a hot meal and a moment of respite to the weary traveler, embodies the very essence of the medieval inn. The very architecture of some modern pubs, with their dark wood, low ceilings, and central bar, subtly harks back to their ancient predecessors, preserving a visual memory of their origins. As the sun rises higher, its rays now piercing through the tavern windows, scattering golden dust motes across the common room. The shadows begin to recede, and the full details of the space emerge with quiet clarity. The empty tankards stand waiting for the next fill. The chairs are poised for new occupants, and the hearth, though quiet now, holds the promise of warmth to come. The tavern, having rested, is ready to awaken once more, ready to embrace the day's tasks, knowing that as dusk falls again, it will once more become a vibrant sanctuary. This cyclical nature, this constant ebb and flow of human presence and quiet repose, is the ultimate testament to the tavern's enduring legacy. It is a reminder that while the specific challenges and technologies of an era may change, the fundamental human needs remain constant. The need for sustenance, for shelter, for information, for entertainment, and above all, for connection. The medieval tavern, in its rough-hewn charm, provided all of these, becoming an indispensable thread in the fabric of human society. As we conclude our journey through the echoes of this medieval night, allow the gentle warmth of the tavern to settle within you. Imagine the soft glow of the fire, not as a fading memory, but as a persistent, comforting light, casting long, peaceful shadows. Let the faint, lingering scent of wood smoke and old ale become a soothing aroma in your mind, a scent of timeless comfort and quiet belonging. The distant murmur of ancient conversations, now a mere whisper, dissolves into the stillness of the present moment. Feel the gentle weight of the past, not as a burden, but as a soft, enveloping blanket of history, drawing you deeper into a tranquil state. The journey through time ends here, but the feeling of peace, the sense of connection to something ancient and enduring, remains. As the light grows softer around you, and the sounds of the world fade into a distant hum, allow yourself to drift gently, effortlessly into the quiet, restorative embrace of deep and peaceful sleep.